Hollywood thrives on noise, but on this occasion the noise did not arrive through a leak, a photograph, or an anonymous source whispering into a journalist's ear. It came from a single, almost careless sentence spoken on a Friday afternoon during what was meant to be a warm, light-hearted television interview, the kind designed to stir nostalgia rather than controversy. Dakota Johnson, relaxed, radiant, and entirely at ease in the familiar role of reflective former co-star, sat opposite a talk show host who could not resist revisiting 50 Shades of Grey, the franchise that had defined an era of pop culture and forever linked her public image to that of Jamie Dornan. When asked what it had been like working together all those years ago, Dakota smiled, shrugged gently, and said with an ease that suggested no calculation at all, "What Jamie and I had was rare. We understood each other completely, sometimes without even speaking." The studio audience laughed, applauded politely, and moved on to the next question, but Hollywood did not move on at all. Within hours, that single line was clipped, replayed, captioned, and repackaged, racing across social media with the velocity reserved for controversy rather than context. Hashtags bloomed instantly: Dakota and Jamie, Rare Connection, Amelia Reacts, and tabloids transformed a reflective comment into a declaration loaded with implication, splashing headlines that screamed of lingering chemistry and emotional bonds that never faded. At first glance, it looked like harmless nostalgia, two actors acknowledging the ease that sometimes develops between colleagues who share demanding, intimate work. Yet for Amelia Warner, Jamie Dornan's wife of more than a decade, the remark landed not as sentiment but as something sharply personal. For years, Amelia had lived alongside a narrative she never authored, one that repeatedly framed her marriage as secondary to a fictionalized on-screen pairing, enduring endless comparisons, speculative articles, and insinuations that her husband's most meaningful connection had been forged not at home, but on set. Through all of it, she had chosen restraint, silence, and dignity over public rebuttal, refusing to compete with headlines or correct stories that fed on reaction. This time, however, something shifted. That phrase, "We understood each other completely," echoed louder than the rest, crossing an invisible line between professional reflection and emotional ownership. Just hours after the clip went viral, Amelia broke her long-held silence, posting a single sentence on social media, calm in tone yet sharp enough to cut through the frenzy. "Understanding is one thing, respect is another. No names, no photographs, no elaboration. Just 12 words that detonated across the industry." Within minutes, her post was trending, dissected and debated by fans, commentators, and columnists alike, some praising her for finally asserting herself after years of quiet endurance, others accusing her of insecurity or overreaction, insisting Dakota meant nothing by it. Yet to those who had followed Amelia and Jamie's story from the beginning, her response felt inevitable rather than dramatic. A source close to the couple later told People magazine that Amelia was not someone who courted conflict, but she was human, and that after years of hearing the same suggestion repeated in different forms, that her husband's deepest understanding lay elsewhere, even the most patient person would reach a breaking point. The next 24 hours unfolded in chaos. Cameras gathered outside Jamie's London home. Reporters shouted questions that collapsed nuance into provocation. Phones buzzed relentlessly with demands for comment from agents, publicists, and editors eager for escalation. Yet Jamie said nothing at all. Silence, however, proved no-shield. The following evening, he appeared unexpectedly at a charity gala in Dublin, impeccably dressed, smiling politely for photographs, but those watching closely could see the tension beneath the surface, the rigid jaw, the eyes carrying something darker than irritation. When a reporter finally asked, "Jamie, how do you feel about Dakota's recent comments?" the carefully maintained composure fractured. He stopped, turned towards the microphones, and said, with a sharpness that startled the room, "Enough. People need to stop turning kindness into scandal." The words were clipped, final, carrying the weight of years of restraint snapping in a single moment. Headlines erupted instantly, framing the exchange as an explosion, a snap, a public defense of Amelia, and while some fans applauded him for finally drawing a line, others claimed his reaction only fueled speculation further. Behind the anger, those close to him insisted, was not hostility towards Dakota, but deep exhaustion with a system that could weaponize a single sentence and force him repeatedly into a false choice between his past and his marriage. Even Dakota herself was reportedly stunned by the backlash, according to sources close to her, explaining that she had been speaking about professional understanding and mutual trust, not romance, and that she held genuine respect for Amelia. But by then, the damage was done. The familiar triangle of Jamie, Dakota, and Amelia once again dominated headlines, memes, and comment threads. Yet this time something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in his career, Jamie was not merely deflecting the noise, he was pushing back against it. 2 days later, away from red carpets and flashing cameras, he agreed to a rare, stripped-back interview in a small London studio, with no glossy PR framing, no rehearsed talking points, just a quiet conversation. There, he finally articulated what the spectacle had obscured for years. That professional intimacy is not emotional betrayal, that understanding between colleagues does not negate love at home, and that repeated public insinuations erode even the strongest relationships. He spoke openly about the toll of having private dynamics endlessly interpreted by strangers, about the unfair burden placed on Amelia to absorb narratives she never invited, and about his own failure at times to challenge those narratives sooner. Fame, he admitted, amplifies everything, including misunderstandings, and the industry thrives on conflict because conflict sells, even when it distorts reality. His outburst in Dublin, he said, was not a performance, but a breaking point, a moment when protecting his marriage mattered more than maintaining his image. In the end, what Hollywood had framed as drama was, in truth, a collision between public myth and private loyalty, between careless words and accumulated silence. The noise had begun with a sentence, but it revealed a deeper truth about boundaries, respect, and the quiet cost of being endlessly misunderstood.
Friendly, we're friends.
Oh, interesting.
And he's amazing.
Yeah, So he's somebody that so this is not like a situation where you've known him since he was a little kid or anything.
When the interviewer finally asked him about the viral clip, about the sharpness in his voice, the anger that had startled even those who thought they knew him well, Jamie Dornan smiled faintly, a reflex more than an emotion, because there was no humor in it at all, only weariness layered over years of restraint. And he admitted quietly that he had spent most of his career pretending to be calm even when he was anything but. Learning early on that composure was expected, rewarded, and praised, while discomfort was best hidden behind politeness. Yet that night in Dublin, something in him simply refused to perform any longer. Leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees, he spoke with the unguarded honesty of a man who had reached the end of patience, explaining that for nearly a decade people had been talking about him and Dakota Johnson as though their shared work had frozen them permanently in a fictional past, that in almost every interview, regardless of the project or the moment, someone inevitably found a way to return to that narrative, and while he understood the fascination, understood that what they created on screen had been intense and convincing, the truth was far simpler and far less sensational, because whatever they shared had always remained exactly where it belonged, on screen and nowhere else. The interviewer listened carefully, allowing the silence to stretch, and Jamie continued, acknowledging openly that when Dakota had said they understood each other completely, she was not wrong. But that understanding did not automatically translate into romance or desire, as so many people seemed determined to believe. Instead, it was about trust forged in an unusual environment, about surviving the same madness of global scrutiny, instant judgment, invasive curiosity, and the peculiar loneliness that comes with fame, a loneliness that exists even in crowded rooms, and that kind of bond, he explained, is not fueled by attraction but by recognition, by the R. But by recognition, by the relief of being seen by someone who knows the weight of it all. He paused, drawing a breath, before admitting that this explanation rarely satisfied the public appetite, because nuance does not trend, and people prefer drama to truth, betrayal to friendship, and simplified storylines to complex human realities. Then, for the first time in the conversation, he spoke directly about Amelia, his voice softening almost imperceptibly as he said that her reaction to the viral moment had been entirely valid, not excessive or emotional, but human, because she had lived with the consequences of these stories for years, absorbing the headlines, the whispers, the constant comparisons, carrying herself with dignity while others debated her marriage as though it were a piece of entertainment. And while she had done So with remarkable grace, no one is immune forever, everyone has a limit, and when she finally spoke up, what the world labeled jealousy was, in his view, nothing more than exhaustion. He looked down briefly, the weight of that realization settling in, and admitted something that surprised even himself as he said it aloud, that he had always told Amelia she never needed to defend herself, that she did not owe anyone explanations or clarifications, but perhaps, he conceded, he should have been the one defending her much sooner. Those words, simple and unpolished, were not framed as an apology rehearsed for effect, but as a confession shaped by regret rather than guilt, and within hours they were extracted, quoted, and repeated across headlines. Yet unlike previous soundbites, they carried a different resonance, because they did not attempt to deny feeling or smooth it over. They acknowledged delay, responsibility, and learning. Almost immediately after the interview aired, Dakota Johnson released her own statement via social media, choosing calm clarity over defensiveness, writing that she never intended to cause hurt, that Jamie and Amelia were family to her in their own ways, and that the bond formed on set had always been built on trust and friendship, nothing more, adding that the media had a habit of twisting ordinary humanity into dramatic narratives, and that she wished them both peace. It was a brief message, but it shifted the tone of the conversation, marking the first time all three names appeared together not as opposing forces, but as parts of a resolved, if imperfect, understanding. What the public could not see, however, was the quieter exchange that had already taken place away from cameras and comment sections, because according to someone close to the situation, Jamie had called Dakota the night before the interview aired, apologizing for the chaos that had erupted, making it clear that he did not blame her for words spoken without malice. And she, in turn, reminded him that the world would always read meaning into things that had never existed, a reality they had both learned to live with. Amelia, characteristically, did not respond publicly at all, yet days later she was photographed walking beside Jamie outside their home. No staged smiles, no defensive distance, just two people moving together in quiet familiarity, their hands brushing lightly. A small gesture that suggested reconciliation had already occurred long before it was ever speculated about. A close friend later revealed that Amelia had watched the interview in private, and that she had cried, not because of anything said about Dakota, but because for the first time in years she heard her husband articulate, plainly and publicly, that he understood her pain, that he recognized the cost of silence, and that moment, though it never trended, mattered more than any headline ever could. In the week that followed, life slowly resumed its rhythm, and Jamie attended another event, this time for a charity he had quietly supported for years, far from the glare of controversy, and when asked whether the eye, differently now, not guarded but reflective, and said that it had reminded him of what truly mattered, because it is easy to lose oneself in noise, in expectation, in the pressure to remain flawless, and sometimes, he admitted, it takes an explosion to strip away pretense and return you to yourself. Choosing his words with care, he added that he loved Dakota, that she was a friend for life, someone he respected deeply, but that Amelia was his home, the person who knew every version of him, even the ones he worked hardest to conceal. And when he had snapped, it was not anger directed at Dakota or even the press, but frustration at a world that continually confuses love with storylines, intimacy with narrative convenience, and connection with betrayal. The room fell silent as he spoke, cameras rolling yet no one interrupting, and he concluded by reflecting that he had played characters who lost everything for the wrong reasons, and he had no intention of becoming one of them in real life. That final line traveled widely, not as fuel for scandal but as something closer to redemption, and as Hollywood inevitably shifted its attention to the next controversy. Those who watched closely recognized that something different had occurred, not a performance, not a calculated defense, but a rare moment of authenticity from a man who had finally chosen truth over comfort. Jamie Dornan had not exploded out of rage, but out of love, out of loyalty to the woman who had stood beside him in silence for years, and out of a desire to protect a peace that mattered more than public approval, offering a quiet reminder that not every connection is romantic, not every bond is a threat, and sometimes the loudest noise in Hollywood is simply the sound of someone finally telling the truth. When the interviewer finally asked Jamie Dornan about the viral clip, about the sharpness in his voice and the anger people claimed to see, he smiled faintly, though there was no humor behind it, only the tired recognition of someone who had spent years perfecting composure as a survival skill. He admitted quietly that he had built much of his career on appearing calm, even in moments when he was anything but, learning early on that restraint was expected of him, rewarded even, while discomfort was something to be managed in private. That night in Dublin, however, he simply could not pretend anymore. Leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees, he explained that for nearly a decade his name and Dakota Johnson's had been tied together in ways that never seemed to fade, resurfacing in interview after interview, project after project, regardless of context. He understood why people were fascinated. They had shared something powerful on screen, something convincing enough to blur lines in the public imagination. But the truth, he said, was far less dramatic. Whatever existed between them had lived and ended on screen. When Dakota said they understood each other completely, he admitted she was right, but understanding did not automatically mean romance. It meant trust, shared experience, and the quiet relief of being seen by someone who had endured the same madness. Sudden fame, relentless judgment, distorted narratives, and the peculiar loneliness that accompanies public life. That kind of connection, he said, is not rooted in desire, but in survival, in recognizing a familiar weight in another person. He paused, acknowledging that nuance rarely survives in an industry built on spectacle, because people want drama, not explanation, and friendship is far less marketable than betrayal. For the first time, he then spoke directly about Amelia, his voice lowering as he said her reaction had been entirely valid. She had lived with these stories for years, he said, absorbing the headlines, the whispers, and the constant comparisons with grace that few people ever acknowledged. Yet grace does not make a person immune. Everyone reaches a limit, and when Amelia finally spoke up, the world dismissed it as jealousy. It was not jealousy, he insisted, but exhaustion. Looking down for a moment, he admitted something that stayed with him long after the interview ended. That he had always told Amelia she never needed to defend herself, never needed to explain her marriage to strangers, but perhaps he should have been the one defending her sooner. Those words, unpolished and unstrategic, spread quickly across headlines, not as scandal but as confession, revealing regret rather than guilt. Within hours, Dakota Johnson released her own statement, calm and unguarded, explaining that she had never intended to cause harm, that the bond formed on set had been rooted in trust and friendship, nothing more, and that Jamie and Amelia both mattered to her in different ways. She spoke of how easily humanity is twisted into narrative, and wished them peace. For the first time in years, the three names appeared together without hostility, not as a triangle but as individuals choosing clarity over conflict. What the public never saw was the quieter reconciliation already unfolding. According to someone close to the situation,